Welcome back to the Adventure Paradox. We have a beautiful guest here with me. If you are watching, you see we are mirroring each other hat to hat.
Hey girl.
What's up? The incredible Wendy Snyder. Wendy, we have known each other through a lot of powerful women. We were talking about Kate Northrup, Kathy Heller, but I don't feel like I would do you justice to properly introduce you. So can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your business and also where in the world are you today?
Yes, thank you, Kat, for having me today. I'm so grateful to be here for this conversation. So, hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Snyder. I am a positive parenting educator and family life coach. I am in San Diego, California, mama two. I've got a 14 and a 17-year-old now, so I have the joy of those later, years of childhood, which is just so much fun. Loving life with the kiddos. And my business helps parents go from stressed and frazzled to peaceful and empowered. We teach firm and kind, connection-based parenting. We teach compassionate discipline versus punishment. We help a lot of folks who have strong-willed kids raise them with dignity and grace and integrity, and most importantly, a really strong relationship, because we believe that strong-willed kids are a blessing, not a curse, and they really are usually our next generation of leaders. So yeah, we help families all over the world. We have a podcast called The Fresh Start Family Show, and we just love our work so much. I feel like it's just such an honor to help humanity in this capacity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's all about the mamas and the papas,
Yeah, true.
because I feel like, and I was watching someone talking about parenting the other day, and they were talking about how this really is the most important job because if we're not taking the time and we're counting on teachers at schools, et cetera, nannies, babysitter, neighbor watching them, who's really supporting, shaping, responding, mirroring, working with our next generation, if it's not our parents. I love this positive parenting term. And it's making me think like, gosh, the fact that that's even a need to exist today, what's that coming out of? And before we started, recording, you talked about like so many of us being raised with the punishment model and just coming out of this history of things being done a certain way. I was working with an 83-year-old this week, and she was talking about, coming out, she was a war baby, right? And that you
Yeah.
weren't allowed to be held. You weren't allowed to sit on mom's lap. You weren't allowed to be touched,
What?
right? Yeah, and just thinking about like what is going on maybe with our parents, right? Or grandparents, what they had going on, and then the need for this positive parenting movement and to even think about something other than a punishment model. Can you start there? Because I'm guessing a lot of your clients are coming in with some sort of framework that is frankly kind of negative, scary, and maybe involves some sort of violence, for lack of a better term.
Yes, this is such a good place to start, Kat, because people do often have a misunderstanding of what positive parenting is, right? So all the synonyms, like all my colleagues, they might use different words, right? So you've conscious parenting educators, you have gentle parenting. I call mine, actually, I'm writing a book right now, and the term that I'm really like leaning into that it's feeling right within our organization over the last year or two is called powerful parenting. So
Mm.
because we believe this gives you true power as a human being to influence other human beings, which our kids are just little humans that look and act just like us. But powerful parenting, but it all, whatever you want to call it, it's all along the same lines. It's firm and kind, connection based, dignity based, grace based work. And a lot of people think that it's permissive, right? So permissive is like just let it. So there's three different models that we teach, and really the leadership models that we teach parents that they have the choice to use in their home is very similar to like a leadership model you would see in governments, right? So there's the permissive, which is like, there's not a lot of rules, kids rule the roost. There's not a lot of strong fences, which really isn't a safe feeling for anybody.
Mhm.
There's a
Mhm.
lot of unconfidence with conflict, so a lot of things get avoided. This is not what we want. And then on the other side is authoritarian or autocratic, and that's where it's kind of my way or the highway.
Mm,
And there's often a lot of hypocrisy in that model because whether you're talking about parents or leaders of a nation, they really just will do anything to justify their behavior. And so there's usually a lot of fear and force, there's usually a lot of threats, a lot of external controls in that model to
mm,
manipulate a human being into action. And so in the parenting world, that, looks like a lot of threats, raising your voice, actually, along with the threats and fear and force comes bribery and rewards. Again, it's like a carrot dangling model. So
mm,
the child is not really developing intrinsic control. They're doing things usually out of fear. So fear they're going to
mm,
get in trouble, fear they're going to be hurt and harmed, whether that's emotionally or physically. We have a lot of parents in our work that grew up in really high control, very toxic religious environments where hurting and harming children was justified in the name of God. And boy, oh boy, does that leave a deep mark. So
mm.
sometimes it's physical, but then sometimes it's emotional, right? So
Yeah.
there's shame, there's isolation. What's wrong with you? How dare you, right? And then the hypocrisy comes in because it's like, I would never, right? If you
Mm,
have a parent exploding on a child, telling them to calm down as they're raising their voice and putting their finger in their face. So lots of hypocrisy, lots of fear and force, and that's just not the model we're down with. So that's autocratic or authoritarian parenting. And then right in the middle is firm and kind democratic parenting. That's where we slow things down, so to speak. We're really interested in the root cause of misbehavior. And we know from trusted psychology, all of the work we teach is really based on the renowned child psychologist mid-century. His name was Rudolf Dreikurs. We know that the reason why humans misbehave is because of needs. And when their need to
mm,
belong, their need to feel powerful, their need to feel valuable, when those needs aren't being met in a healthy way, people misbehave. Whether that's,
mm.
me being snarky with the Starbucks barista this morning or my child rolling her eyes at me when I ask her to put away her wet towels, right? Like whatever it is, it's misbehavior and it just comes down to needs. And so once we start to see misbehavior as communication, we get to the root problem. We use relationship to influence our children. We use modeling to influence our children. So we like really clean up hypocrisy in the firm and kind democratic model because it's just ineffective to
Mm,
expect humans to fall in line when you are modeling the exact same thing. Because the truth is, children learn, like most of what they learn is caught, not taught.
yep.
So you really, I really, especially strong-willed kids, I see them as such angels in the world because they are often the ones that like raise the red flag and invite us into healing because they
Mm,
are often highlighting this inability to get a human to cooperate without fear and force and intimidation. And so
mhm,
we always say our parents, most of them did the best that they could with the set of tools that they had at the time. And now we have this beautiful access to information, right? I think most of us would agree at times it's probably a little bit too much, but we do get to be at choice now. I think
mhm.
parents of the past generations, they just, a lot of them didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are getting the memo. And that's why I created my online business. I was teaching in town for a few years. And then I was like, no, I really want to preach this message from the mountaintop, so to speak. So even if you're in a small town or, 6,000 miles away from me in California, um, you are at choice. And once you
Mm,
are at choice, that's where like true freedom lies. And so, yeah, democratic, firm and kind parenting, the middle ground between too firm and too soft. And it just is beautiful. It changes family lineages, it heals generational cycles. And again, as I alluded to in the beginning with the teenage kids, it's so fun to have the almost 18-year-old now because she's the reason I'm a teacher. So when she was 3, she was born a strong-willed kid. We could feel it from birth. And when she was a toddler and decided to stay home full time with her, I almost lost my mind. And she
mhm,
was the reason why I learned a new way. She's the
mm,
reason why I've like opened up my mind to education, and they really have that ability to change the world. And so if we accept the invitation. A lot of people are like,
yes.
no thanks, I'm good. I'm just going to keep the cycles going of the external controls to like make this child behave. And when you don't do that, you get to see these long-term effects that is so wild. So we've been doing this for 15 years now. that strong will of hers, she just she focused the last year and a half on becoming a D1 college athlete. So she'll go to school in about a year. And she reached her goal. She got committed to play beach volleyball at a Division 1 school that's number 9 in the nation now. And it's
Wow.
just a great example of what a strong will can do, because that was like a needle in the haystack type of situation. I think it's about 2% of high school athletes go on to play Division 1 sports in
Wow.
college. I mean, it was a wild, wild journey to watch her pursue that, but that's what strong-willed kids do. Once they
Yeah.
get their heart set on something and they're supported, they won't stop. So that's a little bit more about the models and what we do.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I'm thinking about this essentially this spectrum that you talked about, where you have these parents who have basically no fences and everyone's crawling all over themselves. And it's making me think of the parents, I think it's called the Willoughbys. Do you know what I'm talking about? But anyways, it's a cartoon and it also is based on a book that I remember reading way back when. But the parents are so into each other that they like completely ignore the kids. They like close the door. It's like, I mean, it's comical, but it's also like, oh,
Yes.
there's mom and dad. Like, I guess we'll have to figure out dinner. So
Yeah.
over here you have no fences. They're just like, okay. And then the other
Yeah.
side you have this authoritarian. I'm thinking of another movie, which I went and saw yesterday with my kids, which is called, I think it's called How to Train a Dragon. And
Oh,
have you seen it? Okay, so you have this,
no, but
all
my
right.
kids want to see it, even as teenagers.
It's super fun. It's super fun. But you have this father figure where things are so scary, and the father has his own story about why and why things
Yeah,
need
of
to be the way
course.
they
Yeah.
are. But they're so scary that the son can't even talk to him about his change in perception. And it ends up, there ends up being sort of a public. Actually, there's a very funny line in it where this one boy, a different boy, is like, yeah, see, my dad's so proud of me. Hey, Dad, did you see me up there? And the dad's like, don't speak to me in public. So that's kind of, they're sort of playing on that side of things where you have,
Yeah.
and they're Vikings, right? So these like really strong
Mm.
father figures.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about that, and again, just how this storytelling and this perception of the parent versus the child, and where so often we can't even see our children. Like we're seeing a projection of them, you know?
Yeah.
And I wonder because I've spoken to some different parenting coaches, and this theme comes up of like ultimately coming around to the place of healing your own inner child. And there are lots of different words and ways to look at this, but recognizing that what you're really coming up against is that the tools you were given, the only way you know how to be seen or heard or felt, etc., is what you've known, and that maybe you want something different, like this healing of the generation. So I wonder, how do
Yeah.
you support parents in doing their own work when you see in them this came up with one of our speakers in the Speak Truth to Live summit, but the vibration of authenticity is 400 times stronger than the vibration of love. So even when
Mm.
someone's saying, I love you, honey, I love you, if they're like running out the door, authentically, they may love you, but they've got something else going on, right? So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more about like how do you work with the parents to help them in their own inner journey to be prepared to support their kids with intrinsic control and all of these other things and to be the firm and kind parent.
That's a great question. When I look at the organization we've created and what we do, I think some of our superpowers that I try to lead with, one of them is humility. And
Mm,
so as a teacher over the last 15 years, I've been really authentic with my struggles and taught from a place of you are not crazy. Like there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with you and it's time to get the help that you need to stop
Mm,
to
mm,
disengage from this system of authoritarianism. I've written articles. One's called I Left Bruises.
oof,
Another one is called The Night I Threw a Book at My Kid. You can Google them very easily. Fresh Start Family, just Google those titles. And you know, I always come in for, again, for 15 years now and would tell my students, okay, you guys, so I lost it last night. Or, wow, like here's the triggered moment I had this week. And here's what I've learned. Here's what
Mm,
I'm realizing. Here was the root cause, right? And so because we're certified life coaches here at First Start Family too, we have the ability to do all the underwork. But the
hmm
way that I've taught my students to do that underwork is by going through it myself.
mm,
So, now, again, 15 years of deep life coaching work where we're working on like deep triggers. That's what's brought me to be the educator that I am today. And it gives me the ability to talk so openly about the mistakes that I've made as a parent without the shame. Because
mm,
when you help people shake the shame, which we're really into group learning, right? Like I don't do many private sessions except for like my super high level students that are becoming certified parenting teachers under our approach, the Fresh Start Family approach. I don't do many privates because I believe so deeply in the power of community. And when you share authentically your struggles, your mistakes, and what you're realizing,
hmm
then and you realize no one actually is when you're in a safe environment, the internet's a little bit, or the social media is a little bit different, but when you're in a really tight, safe community, you realize, oh, no one's actually judging me. They're feeling
Yeah.
closer to me. So that opens up an ability to find humility and to start seeing all the blind spots because that's like, I think, the biggest opportunity for parents. And again, our people are really coming out of the autocratic model. So
Yeah.
most of our parents mimic kind of what I went through. First 3 years, all the books, all the people just told me, show her who's boss. Don't be afraid to
hmm
hit her. Here's a
mm.
air quotes Christian book that'll tell you how to use a switch or a
Oh,
thing from your back tree, like crazy shit.
oh,
And my little intuition was like, this feels odd, but I have to. Anyways. So I did the full 180, right? But like those neural pathways that I had of like the knee jerk misbehavior is unsafe. And that's a whole different conversation, right? Most of us were raised in homes the first 2 decades of our life where if you made a mistake, if you challenged authority, there was danger, right?
mm,
So it makes sense why then we become parents and we're like, they spill their milk or they roll their eyes and it's like, boom, smack it down fast. Like that reactive model just becomes the norm. And so my people usually 9 out of 10 times are doing the 180 and realizing like, oh, I don't have to live like this. And this, I have to go first. I
yeah.
have to be the one to go first. And what they're once they're able to admit that without shame and just be like, and normally when I coach, I have a whole team that coaches our students, but when I coach, I'm usually going right, not for the jugular, that sounds awful. I mean, I can be intense, but I mean, I go right for the root cause. So if someone
hmm
is asking like, "Oh my gosh, my kid won't stop blaming people or won't stop hitting," like we can get pretty fast to where the parent usually still has that behavior and if it's a blind spot, and then as soon as they get the help that they need, as soon as they go a little bit deeper with whether it's an emotion they're overlooking, we teach like a whole like framework of how to move through like triggers in your protection behavior. Once they start doing that, the child's behavior lessens. It
Yeah.
starts to lift, it starts to dissipate when they come at their kid from an angle of you're not crazy. I'm learning the same thing. Like that's what most
Uh,
of our parents are facing. They're because no one taught us emotional literacy when we were young. No one
right.
taught us like how do you feel angry in a way that's like healthy and
hmm
honors your
hmm
justice button, but doesn't
Mm,
disrespect yourself or others. Like, holy smokes, many of us are learning that in our third, fourth decades of life, and we have a 6-year-old that we're teaching it too. Another reason why they're angels. So that's kind of how we start tapping into it, and we get some pretty insane results, right? Like, I mean, we have thousands of pages of success stories where parents are just like, holy smokes, this
hmm
is different this month. All of a sudden, my kid is taking responsibility. They're coming up and just saying, like, oh my gosh, like, I get it. I did this. I'm going to change tomorrow without being forced, like the
Yeah.
forced apology. We teach parents to really do it differently. I mean, there's just crazy results happening in homes. And I do think it's because they're learning about the power of humility and then really changing from a place that doesn't include shame, which is a work in progress for sure. And there's a lot of
Okay.
remothering that happens or refathering.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, you just said something that we definitely need to riff on, this idea of the forced apology. And I was
Yeah.
thinking thinking about what's the most recent anecdotal story that, I could share with you that you might give us some coaching on. So
Yeah.
last night, we're driving home from a pretty long day. It's like a 45, 60-minute drive home, right? And we had gone out to see this movie, right? We had gone shopping. We had gone to Peak Panda we've been out for quite a while. It's been a long day,
Yeah.
right? And the girls, my girls were farm girls, right? So they're like loading things that weigh as much as they do into the bed of the truck and, like pushing around the feed stuff. And they love this stuff, right? But it also takes energy and is maybe contributing to a pretty long day. So we're in the truck, we're driving home. My husband's not with me, it's just me and the girls. And one of them says, Mommy, can you give me that pink piece of candy? She has like one of those, whatever, like Pixie Pops kind of a thing.
Yep.
And she had brought it into the feed store and was like putting it down places. And I was like, I'm gonna take this. Like we can't
Yeah.
do that. And so I reach back to hand it back, and the other child, the older child, takes it. And I'm driving and I can hear them in the back. And the younger one's like, give it to me. Give it to me. That's mine. And she's like, no, share it with me. Share it with me. Like I want some too, you know? No, give it to me. Give it to me. And so then I'm driving and then, ow, mom, she hit me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm hearing this conversation. That is her candy. You took
Yeah.
the candy. She asked you repeatedly to give it to her. You refused, and then she hit you. And now you're asking me to ask her to apologize to you for hitting you. But I think you weren't listening. And it's very interesting because I'm an oldest. Both of my parents are oldest. I'm married to an eldest. And so
Yeah.
this is the older child, and I'm saying, you're older, you know better. You've got to be
Yeah.
nicer to your
All the
sister.
classics.
And so it's interesting, like witnessing yourself as a parent and hearing these things and hearing, God, my mom used to say this stuff to me. You know what I mean? Like my mom used to say, you're the oldest, you know better. You need to take care of your sister.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is this helping? And so we go from there, carry on. I think they end up apologizing to each other, forced apology for sure.
Right. Right.
Then we get to the gas station. We fill up on gas. I tell them they can each have one ice cream thing. Mind you, we've been to the movies. They had candy already today. Like, so we got in
But
there.
you're tapping into the guilt, the mom guilt. I've kept him out too long. Maybe sugar make it better.
All of this, right? All like
Human parent. Yeah.
I'm playing the tape, right? I'm right there with
Yeah.
it. And so we get to the gas station. It's taking me a minute to get the diesel hooked up, whatever. Finally, a couple minutes later, I come in. They still haven't made a decision. And now they're thinking about all the other things besides ice cream they might want instead. No, more candy is not an option. At least the ice cream has
Yeah.
dairy. It's gonna like slow it down.
Right.
Anyway, so we go through this whole thing, and I'm like, you have 3 minutes to make a decision, right? So we're walking back to the car. My oldest one gets so upset, can't make a decision. She ends up going with no ice cream. We're walking back to
Okay.
the car, and she's like, Mom, it's not fair. You do that thing, where you say 3 minutes and we don't have enough time. And I'm like, you were already in there for like 5 minutes before I got in there because I was, doing the gas. Like,
Yeah.
you had plenty of time and you need to learn to make decisions more efficiently. And I'm older and I've had more time to think about making decisions, and
Yeah.
that's true, but this is a skill you've got to learn. And tonight you're not having ice cream. And so then she's like fully pouting. And I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like, so I'd love to just hear your thoughts, like in these moments where, again, I'm witnessing myself essentially
Yeah.
forcing an apology between two siblings, right?
Yeah.
Over and over.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that I'm sure you hear from a lot of people is it's at those points of exhaustion.
Yeah.
At the end of the
Exactly.
day, decision fatigue, we've been on it all day, and like it's time to get home. What are your
Yep.
thoughts?
It's, oh, I just had one of those nights 2 nights ago. My little girl had been at a beach volleyball tournament for 2 days and had an awful last game. Like she got her tail kicked.
Oh,
And yeah, it was the end of the night and I started bickering and engaging in that. And she was, she's just like, Mom, I've had a long day, and I'm like to
right?
myself, the tape, I'm like, oh yeah, self, this. You could have disengaged, you could have detached, you could have had more compassion. So here's the thing. The most important thing is that we look at this from a lens of not right versus wrong, but
Yes.
more like curiosity and
Mm,
effective. I always vote for effective versus ineffective, right?
mm,
So it's like, what might feel more effective to like influence with connection versus shame, control,
yeah.
force, belittling, right? So like
Mm,
when you look back, and really that is the work in the beginning, when you first start really studying this stuff, is like it just takes a long time to get the space in the middle between stimulus and response, right? Viktor Frankl teaches us that like the more you're able to like lean into that space is really where your freedom to choose is.
Hmm.
Um, and in the beginning, you have a lot of reactions that you later look back on and be like, oh, did I do that wrong? And there is, in my opinion, it's just not about wrong. It's about understanding that there's different options. So when it comes to the candy thing, I think, it's you have such beautiful awareness around the judgment of the older, right? And so that's what you really want to go into and think about and kind of dig into, there's a million different ways to do that. But we are often hardest on, in my opinion, this is the way it most of the time shakes out in families. We have a tendency to be hardest on the kids that are most like us
Mm.
because we are hard on ourselves. And when we're really good at being hard on ourselves, we're really good at being hard on others, especially our
Mm.
children. And so a
Mm.
lot of us, if we're like a little bit strong-willed, if we're a little bit alpha, if we're a little bit outgoing, if we're the oldest, like this one is, whatever, and we were given this message a lot of like, don't be so this, don't be so, stop being you. I actually said that to my
Mm.
daughter one day when she was
Woo!
like 12 years old. It was one of my biggest mistakes in my life. And boy, oh boy, have I continued to do the work to help her understand what is actually behind that. And it is
Mm.
not about her, right? But like that
Mm.
is the message, right? I
Mm.
was to stop being you. And so just knowing that there's some of that energy in those moments when you're watching, and especially when you're watching an older one F with a little one, right? A little
Mhm.
bit. And
Mhm.
so the thing is that the forced apologies, they don't really give us the long-term results. And
Yeah.
so slowing down to help them realize you're not crazy. You're both tired. You're both like
Yeah.
you've had a long day. And my teacher with the little ones used to always say, I had this, little one that was probably around 2 when I was studying with her, 2 or 3, and then the older one was like 5, and I would just be like, why is she so difficult? And Susie would be like, well, look at him. I would be
Mm.
annoyed with him too. A, he came into the world. B, he's an incredible athlete already at the age of 3. He was like skateboarding by the age of 3. He's so handsome. He's like the most loving, snuggly boy. Like,
Mm.
I would be annoyed at him too. So like she would always remind me that these little, you know, and he would mess with her, right? Like kids, the little ones know early on. There's a lot of stuff that happens in their lifetime where they learn to mess with the older
Yeah.
ones. So it's not like they're totally innocent. So when a kid responds like that in the moment, like give it mine, half mine, there's a lot of pent up, like it's just sibling dynamics, right? But when we come at them from an angle of you're both responsible for learning how to have conflict peacefully, how to work
Mm.
out your own stuff,
Yeah.
and do it in a way where I can continue to drive and feel safe, that's the angle we come at. And so in that situation, we would probably just encourage you to like slow down. And a lot of times, especially if kids are fighting in cars, I even encourage, I know this sounds crazy to people, but actually pulling over
Yep.
in a safe place, stopping the vehicle and saying, hey guys, I can't drive
Yeah.
when you guys are fighting. You're not crazy. It's been a long day. It makes sense why you're both a little on edge. And then we might go into like peaceful conflict resolution, which is I feel I want. It might take you 5 to 7 minutes, yes, which seems like the end of the world when you just want to get home. But when we just squash it and do the forced apology, just say sorry to each other and move on, it's just perpetuating the inability to solve conflicts peacefully, right? So
Oh,
it's like that's an idea where you can pull over, or you can actually even get out of the car for just a minute, look at the trees, listen to the birds, do some nervous system regulation, maybe
totally.
open the back door for the one that's like the most like triggered or dominant in that moment, hold her hand, look right in her eyes, and just offer the compassion and empathy, which takes a lot of practice to learn how to use
Hmm.
that muscle in the moments you're triggered, and just, deliver the message of like, you belong, you're not crazy.
For sure.
And we got to choose a different way here. Right. And then you talk to her in whatever you were saying, like, look, remember you ate yours earlier, right? Like, let's just talk about this. You're not crazy. I get it.
Hmm.
And you guys can work this out, right? And so teaching peaceful conflict resolution in the moment. But what we find about the forced apologies is, usually the forced apology is for the person doing it. Now, when you do it with siblings, you're forcing each other, and it's like it doesn't really mean anything, usually not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I were to say sorry for you for being late this morning, like if I'm like, oh my God, Kat, I'm so sorry, I'm 5 minutes late, I'm sorry, what
Mhm,
would you
mhm.
say? What would you probably say?
No worries. I'm glad you're here now.
Of course. So that's for me. It does
Yeah.
nothing. It does nothing to support you, to repair our relationship, to make amends,
Hmm.
to make you feel like I'm going to take responsibility for not being late the next time we have a podcast interview. So once you start to teach your kids instead peaceful conflict resolution, and then we use the term, thank you for your grace with me, I'm learning. Thank
Mm,
you for being patient with me. That's just like a replacement, whether a kid has pushed a kid at the park, thrown sand in their face, a kid's stolen their kid's candy or whatever it is. Like
yeah.
but really seeing it from they're equals. They
Yeah.
both are being called to have peaceful conflict resolution is the name of the game there. And then the second example you gave was, oh, it was like letting her be, um,
The
what,
natural consequence of taking too much time not to get the ice cream, maybe.
yeah,
And she was
exactly.
pouting. Yeah, really upset.
Yeah, yeah, so that one is just like, yeah, natural consequences are great sometimes, right? That's what we teach as part of a compassionate discipline toolkit. There's self-calming natural consequences and logical consequences. And the only thing I encourage parents to do quite often is just to accept the invitation to slow it down, right? I think
Hmm.
people like you and I, and like we invest in nervous system programs or mentors that like help us signal safety to our body and slow things down and remember like why are we living in such a rush? Right? Like,
Yes.
why? And I think
Yeah.
our kids, like, we might pay for Pilates and yoga and meditation classes. And after this interview, right, like, you're going to spend time with like an incredible healer that like slows it down. But yet, when our children provide the opportunity to be like, hold on, I just need one more minute, we're like, nope, there is no
Yep.
time. Right?
Yep.
And so just being like, what would it be the end of the world if I did slow down and connect with her here, right? Like what would
So good.
happen if I said, hey, I get it. Sometimes it feels it's been a long day. Here's your choices. You can
Yeah.
either get something or not. And, we teach a four-step, it's called the Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint. Parents can just Google it. Fresh Start Family Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint, but it's like 4 steps to setting firm limits and following through with consistency. So in that situation, it's like, hey, we're going to go in where you guys can grab an ice cream and then we're going to leave. We got to get home. The dogs need to be fed, whatever. Then you just follow through with that process, which in
Hmm.
the moment, it just looks like empathy. Like, hey, look, I know you're tired. It's been a
Yeah.
long day. I know this is tough. And what was our agreement? So here's your choices. And that just
Totally.
builds the connection in that moment where it avoids the like meltdown. So then the next 20 minutes of your drive is like tense and like, so
Hmm.
natural
Hmm.
consequences are great, but there's always an opportunity to look at like, did I lead the way I want to
Hmm.
lead
Yeah.
there? And
Yeah.
looking at it from an angle of like today, looking at yesterday is really strong. And there's just no reason for shame. you know, it's like we get to make different decisions tomorrow and just learn and like try new things.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things. I definitely want to talk about the holiday. So as we're wrapping up
Oh
here,
yeah,
because a lot of folks listening to this are going to be on summer break. So they've got all the summer break stuff going on, but also the holiday stuff going
summer.
on. Summer! Um, those who have read my book, The Adventure Paradox, which is actually about when my children were 2 years old and 6 months old, and I took a 6,000-mile odyssey with 3 horses and a dog and a nanny because my husband was in
I
Dubai
love
part-time, right?
that.
Like it was really a coming home to how to be a parent. And when I say parent, I'm also a horse mom, I'm a dog mom, I'm a cat mom. But it was
Right.
really interesting. And one of the big takeaways on that trip was slow down. There was a book that came out called
Yeah.
Slow Down to the Speed of Life. And I talk about this a lot, this idea of you can pull over. Because back in the day, 1922, which was the year when there were 50% more cars than horses suddenly on most major cities around the world. That was
Mm,
100 years ago, Wendy. That was not that long ago. So what
yeah.
happened when we stopped having to emotionally co-regulate with an animal to go somewhere? When we started
So
thinking about our
true.
actual mode of transportation as being a machine, like It's 60 miles. It should take me 60 minutes to get there at 60 miles per hour. The kids are fighting. I can't pull over for 5 more minutes. Well, with horse time, it, it'll be about 60 minutes. It might take us 75 today if the road is out,
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
horse is spooking at the bridge today because the water's running high. Like, we slowed down a lot more to the speed of life to each other, so even though
Mm.
there was probably a lot more hitting and violence and so on going on, perhaps back then, I also think there was probably a lot more connection because there had to be. Because you were
I
connecting
agree.
with animals and just the flow of life and nature. And, we didn't have the same thing we have. Like, it's such a blessing that you and I can connect. I'm over here outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. You're in San Diego, and like we can
Yeah.
connect this way. But people forget that the true connection is in real time and real space. Like, this is this
So
beautiful
beautiful.
connection, but like we forget that it's that moment, and that you can pull over, you can get right with yourself, even if you can't make it right with your kids in that moment, you can
Right.
just, whoo, let me chill out so I don't say something, like,
Yeah.
and that's the same when working with horses because horses, like, they are energetic sponges. If you're not right, they're not right,
Really?
So yeah, if you're freaking out, they're freaking out, and there are different kinds of horses. Some are going to be a little more old reliable where they're like, you're freaking out. It's your first time. You'll be okay. And then there are others that are like, you're freaking out. I should freak out. You're freaking
Yeah.
out. I'm freaking out, right? So it's like really
Same with humans,
amazing.
right?
Totally
Different
like
types.
humans. This
Yeah.
is why I love bringing families into this work because you see how your dynamic works together. And so often I learned this in the pandemic when like families were flocking to me to learn about horses, wanted to be outside in nature.
Mm.
I'm not training the kids. I'm training the parent because the parent is coming in with all this fear and projection. Get away from the back of the horse. Get away from the back of the horse. The horse is like, "You're not bothering me. I know he's there.
Yeah.
He's been pulling on my tail for 5 minutes, Like, I know where he is. I'm not gonna kick him.
Yeah.
So it's
That
just
is so cool, Kat.
but it's really interesting to like just return to it. And then you take something like a national holiday. And in this journey, we had a breakdown on that national holiday. Guess what? A lot of things are closed. Getting your trailer hauled, getting your horses to safety, all of those things on a national holiday, they're closed. So you're really going to have to come
Mm.
back to, just like in the pandemic, that self-sufficiency. Like, okay, how can I stay okay, even if it's going to be a 5 hour wait now before we can get hauled to safety, even if we're not going to be in a real bed until 2 p.m. and I'm breastfeeding in the trailer, Like,
Yeah.
just thinking about for those who are with kids who might be traveling, who might need to hear, I'm going to say it loud and clear again, you can pull over. Like, you can
Yeah.
pull over for a minute. You can find a park, let them swing, give yourself a second, do some push-ups, like
Yes.
let
So
yourself
good.
change. And I'm guessing there are a lot of parents who might be coming into this summer with maybe PTSD from last summer or whatever's going on, who need to hear from you. How do you do summer? How do you do holidays? How do you do these moments where our natural rhythms are sort of forced into something because we don't have the structure of school or we don't have the structure of usual weekdays, etc. I'd love to hear you riff on this.
Yeah. Oh, I just love everything you just said. And I just love your work. I'm just so interested in, yeah. So, summer. Yes. We see parents, and I was exactly like this. Man, I would get such bad anxiety as summer would come along when the kids were little. Now they're just like completely self-managed, right? And so it's just a different thing. And I still get a little bit with like, am I going to allow them to be on too much screen time, right? Like the 14-year-old is definitely he loves his Minecraft and little games with his friends. But I think one of the best things we can remember is that proactivity is really, really helpful. And I know it feels so air quotes hard, but if we can get some family meetings going now, even if, summer has started for a lot of people, we're a month in for many people who got out the end of May, if you can sit down and lay out some expectations and some visions for the peace you want to see in your home, the self-regulation around screens, the peaceful conflict resolution that you want to see with kids, the taking care of your body, even when there's not like a hardcore limit on bedtime because no one has to get up at 6 a.m. anymore. laying out the vision can be really helpful just to get
Mhm.
everyone on the same page in an agreement type of way. So agreements are really, really important because we're not just telling our kids, like they're very different than compliance statements and they land a lot differently, especially in a strong-willed kid's body. When you can
Yeah.
get them to understand these limits, these rules, these boundaries, these family morals that we have, they serve you, kiddo.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're going to be
Hmm.
so much happier this summer when you really understand you can work it out with your brother or your sister without hitting, kicking, scratching each other, taking each other's stuff. It just feels really good. Like we
Yeah.
all want more joy. We all want more peace. We all want to have fun this summer. So how are we going to do that as a team? That's kind of one of your most effective tools that you can use. And so family
Hmm.
meetings is a great way to do that. And if you can do one every Sunday or, before the week gets kicked off, that gives you a little bit more power. There's a quote, like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure,
Such
right?
a
Like
good
if you
quote.
can just
Yeah.
get ahead, because if you have a little bit of a fear of something that's going to happen, I have a podcast episode for my podcast, The Fresh Start Family Show. It's like fear is your friend. Sometimes, of course, we learn through our nervous system work to understand what is like perceived threats and what is actual a threat. But if you're
Sure.
like, a lot of times as parents will go, I knew that was going to happen, right? We
Mm.
like if you know you have kids that get physical with each other,
Mm.
don't just wing it. Like create some plans, do some education, teach them what peaceful conflict resolution is, which is it's simple, right? Like it's just a little thing that we teach. But like do it now and
Yeah.
then just have compassion and grace with yourself and know that as long as it's not violent video games, we're super like not into violent video games and social for kids. We advocate for kids not to have iPhones till high school. But as long as it's not that, like give yourself grace with the TV and the tech time, your kids are going to be okay. Get them out in nature as much as possible. Nature is just the name of the game, you know. Nature, 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 nature. If you are
Nature and
working
nurture.
out every day, just maybe put your gym membership on hold for 2 months and just get yourself in the trails, get yourself doing your push-ups, in the grass instead of like in the four closed walls, that kind of stuff. That's what comes to mind to make summer the best as possible.
Oh, so good. Okay, how can people find you? Because I know a lot of folks are going to want to follow these mic drops all the way home to your website and work with
Oh,
you. How
yeah.
can folks find
Well,
you?
I would love it if your folks come and find me. First off, our podcast, The Fresh Start Family Show. Come find us there. We've got a gazillion episodes with some incredible authors, experts. Sometimes I do solo episodes with my husband, which is nice to bring in that kind of male perspective. And then Instagram, I'm at Fresh Start Wendy. Took a break for 6 months, but I've been back
Hmm.
doing some shares. And then our Quick Start Learning Bundle is a great place to start. Comes with an extensive learning guide. It's totally free. Comes with a free 1 hour workshop that's interactive, so you can ask questions. And it's all around how to thrive with strong-willed kids. So those kids that really make you question, why did I become a parent? Why does it have to be so hard? Why do you question everything?
Mm.
Why? That Quick Start Learning Bundle, totally free, is a great place to start. And that's freshstartfamilyonline.com/power.
Awesome. And we'll, of course, put all of this in the show notes. Hopefully, we can include maybe the Firm and Kind blueprint. I know you said that's easy to
Yes,
find, but we
please.
we
Yeah.
talked about that one. I think that would be a good one for folks to get right to. Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been like truly transformative, and I know I'm not the only mama out there. And again, if you don't have children and you're listening to this, wow, hats off to you. You obviously know someone who does. You may identify as a horse mom, a cat mom. You can use all of this there
Yeah.
too. Really checking in with your animals, checking in with your soul, and get them out into nature too, of course.
Yes. Oh,
That's
I
awesome.
love that, Kat. This really has been such a joy. I love your work too. Thank you for spreading light in the world and supporting family, everyone in this capacity. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Hats off to you. Listeners, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.